Hey guys, tonight we begin with a story that'll make your worst Monday morning look like a spa day. Picture this. You think you're tough because you hit the gym 3 times a week and drink protein shakes. Meanwhile, there were warriors who bit their own shields until their teeth cracked, fought naked in sub-zero temperatures, and considered death in battle the only honorable way to leave this world. Welcome to the world of Viking Berserkers. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on the fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Because what you're about to hear will shatter every romantic notion you've ever had about Viking warriors. This isn't the sanitized Hollywood version, with perfectly groomed actors and choreographed fight scenes. This is the brutal, uncompromising reality of men who literally became animals in battle. You wouldn't last a day as a berserker. Oh, you probably wouldn't last an hour. And by the end of tonight's journey, you'll understand exactly why these warriors were both revered and feared, even by their own people. ****. Chapter 1. The Making of a Monster. 10,000 plus characters. ****. You wake up at dawn in 9th century Norway, but calling it waking up is generous. You've been jolted awake by the sound of your older brother Bjorn vomiting blood into a wooden bucket. He's been trying to achieve berserker rage for 3 months now, and his body is destroying itself in the process. The stench of bile mixed with whatever hallucinogenic mushrooms he consumed last night fills the small, smoke-choked hut you call home. Your feet hit the frozen dirt floor, and immediately you feel the bite of Nordic winter seeping through the gaps in the timber walls. There's no central heating here, no morning coffee, no checking your phone. There's just the brutal reality that if you don't prove yourself worthy of joining the Berserker Brotherhood soon, you'll spend your entire life as a common farmer, which in 9th century Scandinavia might as well be a death sentence. You stumble outside into air so cold, it feels like needles in your lungs. The sun hasn't risen yet, but you can see your breath forming ice crystals that fall to the ground with tiny clicking sounds. Your training master, Eric the Blood Drunk, is already waiting for you. His scars tell the story of 30 years of combat, and his missing left eye socket is a permanent reminder of what happens when you're not fast enough with your shield. "You're late," he growls, though you know damn well you're not. Being late in berserker training means getting beaten with a wooden club until you can't stand. Being on time means getting beaten with a wooden club until you learn to fight through the pain. There's no winning here, only surviving. Eric hands you a practice sword that weighs roughly as much as a modern dumbbell. But this isn't your gym where you can take breaks between sets and sip water. This is a world where weapon mastery means the difference between living to see another sunrise and having your intestines used to divine the future by some enemy shaman. Your first lesson isn't sword work or shield techniques. It's learning to ignore your body's desperate pleas for mercy. Eric strikes you across the ribs with a wooden staff hard enough to crack bone. The pain explodes through your torso like lightning, but you're not allowed to cry out. Showing pain is showing weakness, and weakness gets you exiled from the warrior path forever. Feel that? Eric snarls, his breath visible in the frigid air. That's nothing compared to what a Saxon axe will do to you. A berserker doesn't feel pain. He channels it into rage. You're bleeding now, crimson drops staining the snow beneath your feet. But this is just the beginning. Over the next 4 hours, you'll be struck, kicked, and beaten until your body learns to transform agony into fury. This isn't abuse. This is preparation for a life where your enemies will try to kill you in ways that would make modern horror movies seem tame. By midday, you're barely conscious. Your ribs feel like they're grinding against each other with every breath, and your left shoulder has been dislocated twice. But Eric isn't done with you. He produces a small leather pouch filled with dried mushrooms that look like something you'd find rotting in a forest. "Eat these," he commands, and you know better than to hesitate. The mushrooms taste like dirt mixed with decay, but within minutes, the world begins to shift around you. Colors become more vivid, sounds more intense. Your pain doesn't disappear. It transforms into something else entirely, something primal and hungry. This is your introduction to the chemical cocktail that berserkers used to achieve their legendary battle fury. Modern scientists believe they consumed Amanita muscaria mushrooms, which contain psychoactive compounds that can induce hallucinations, reduce pain sensitivity, and trigger violent episodes. But you don't know any of this. All you know is that suddenly, the idea of fighting doesn't terrify you anymore. It excites you. Eric sees the change in your eyes and nods approvingly. Now you begin to understand. A berserker isn't just a warrior. He's a conduit for Odin's wrath. But first, you must learn to survive the fury without destroying yourself. He's referring to the documented cases of berserkers who, in their drug-fueled rage, turned on their own allies or became so violent they had to be killed to protect their communities. This isn't a superhero origin story. This is a process that destroys as many candidates as it creates. The rest of your day is spent learning to control the storm raging inside your chemically altered mind. You practice weapon forms while hallucinating. Learn to distinguish friend from foe while your perception of reality crumbles. And attempt to maintain enough sanity to follow basic commands while every instinct screams at you to kill everything in sight. As the sun sets, painting the sky the color of fresh blood, you collapse in the snow, your body pushed beyond every reasonable limit. But you're still alive, which means you've passed the first test. Tomorrow, Eric tells you, you'll learn about the real meaning of pain. You crawl back to your hut, every muscle screaming, every bone aching, knowing that this was the easy day. The mushrooms are wearing off now, leaving you with a crushing headache and the metallic taste of blood in your mouth. Your family looks at you with a mixture of pride and terror, because they know you're becoming something that isn't entirely human anymore. This is what it means to start down the berserker path, and you haven't even learned to fight yet. The hunger of heroes you thought yesterday was brutal? Welcome to day 2, where you'll discover that berserkers don't just train to fight. They train to survive on the edge of starvation, while maintaining the strength to split a man in half with an axe. Your stomach is eating itself. You've been awake for 30 minutes, and the gnawing hunger in your gut feels like a living thing trying to claw its way out. But this isn't accidental. This is deliberate. Berserkers fast for days at a time, not because they're trying to lose weight for beach season, but because warriors who fight in foreign lands can't rely on regular meals. Eric meets you at the training ground with what passes for breakfast. A small chunk of dried fish that's probably older than you are, and a cup of whatever liquid they could squeeze out of fermented grains. The fish tastes like leather soaked in salt water, and the drink burns your throat like liquid fire. This is luxury compared to what you'll be eating when you're raiding enemy territories. A berserker's body must learn to draw strength from nothing, Eric explains as you force down the rancid fish. When you're 3 days into enemy territory with no supply lines, your muscles don't care that you're hungry. Your enemies certainly don't care. He's not exaggerating. Archaeological evidence shows that Viking warriors often survived on minimal rations during long expeditions. They developed techniques for preserving food that would keep for months, but those techniques didn't make the food taste any better. Dried fish, fermented dairy products, and grain porridge were staples, but they were often supplemented with whatever could be foraged or hunted along the way. After your magnificent breakfast, Eric leads you to a different part of the training ground. Today, you're learning weapon work, but not the kind you see in movies. You're learning to fight with tools designed for one purpose: killing human beings as efficiently as possible. He hands you an authentic berserker's axe, and immediately you understand why these weapons were so feared. This isn't the decorative piece you might see in a museum. This is a chunk of iron shaped into an instrument of death, with an edge honed to razor sharpness and a handle worn smooth by the hands of men who used it to end lives. The weight distribution is completely different from anything modern people have experience with. The head is heavy enough to split bone, but the handle is long enough to generate tremendous leverage. One proper swing from this weapon could cleave through a man's torso, and in the hands of a trained berserker, it becomes an extension of their rage-fueled body. But before you can even dream of combat, you need to build the specific muscle groups required to wield these weapons effectively. Eric demonstrates the basic axe forms, and you immediately realize that your modern gym routine has prepared you for absolutely nothing useful. These movements require explosive power from your core, incredible grip strength in your forearms, and the ability to maintain perfect balance while generating devastating force. Your shoulders burn after just 10 minutes of practice swings, and your lower back feels like it's going to snap in half. A berserker's strength comes from his whole body working as one weapon. Eric explains, watching you struggle with the basic motions. Your gym muscles are for show. These muscles are for survival. He's absolutely right. Modern fitness focuses on aesthetic development and general health. The berserker training was purely functional. Every exercise served a specific purpose related to combat effectiveness. They didn't have time or resources for anything that didn't directly translate to battlefield superiority. After weapon training comes endurance work, but not the kind where you jog on a treadmill while watching Netflix. Eric straps a pack filled with stones to your back, roughly 60 pounds of dead weight, and points toward a distant hill. Run to the top and back. If you're not back before the sun reaches that point, he indicates a position roughly an hour away. You don't eat tonight. You start running, and within 5 minutes, you understand why berserkers were feared across Europe. This isn't just physical conditioning. This is mental conditioning. Your body wants to quit. Your mind wants to give up. But quitting means hunger, and hunger in a warrior culture means weakness. The pack bounces against your back with every step, the straps cutting into your shoulders like knives. Your lungs burn in the cold air, and your legs feel like they're made of lead. But you keep running, because the alternative is admitting that you're not strong enough to join the Brotherhood. Halfway up the hill, you start hallucinating again. Whether it's residual effects from yesterday's mushrooms or your brain's response to extreme physical stress, you begin seeing shapes moving in the forest around you. In berserker culture, these visions weren't considered delusions. They were communications from the spirit world, messages from Odin himself. By the time you reach the top of the hill, you're barely human anymore. You're operating on pure will. Your body pushed beyond its physical limits into some primal state, where pain becomes just another sensation to be ignored. This is exactly what berserker training is designed to achieve. The rundown is worse than the climb up. Your legs are shaking with exhaustion, but you're carrying momentum that could easily send you tumbling down the rocky slope. One wrong step means broken bones, and broken bones mean the end of your berserker aspirations. You make it back to the training ground with minutes to spare, collapsing in the snow with your heart hammering so hard you can feel it in your throat. Eric nods approvingly, which is the closest thing to praise you're likely to receive. Your reward for completing the run is another chunk of dried fish and the privilege of not starving tonight. But even as you choke down the barely edible food, you know that tomorrow will be worse. Because becoming a berserker isn't about reaching a certain level of competence. It's about constantly pushing beyond what you thought was possible. As night falls, you lie in your hut listening to the wind howl through the timber walls, every muscle in your body screaming with fatigue. Your hands are raw and bleeding from gripping the axe handle. Your shoulders feel like they've been beaten with hammers, and your feet are covered in blisters that have blisters. But there's something else growing inside you too. Something hungry and violent that feeds on the pain and exhaustion. It's the beginning of the berserker rage, the animal fury that will either make you into a legendary warrior or kill you in the attempt. Tomorrow, Eric has promised, you'll learn about real combat. And suddenly, Today's training seems gentle by comparison. Blood and brotherhood. It's been a week since your training began, and your body has adapted in ways that would terrify a modern doctor. Your pain tolerance has increased to inhuman levels. Your muscle density has improved dramatically. And most disturbing of all, you've begun to enjoy the violence. This morning, Eric introduces you to your first sparring partner, a boy named Ulf who's been training for 3 months longer than you. Ulf is what happens when berserker conditioning actually works. His eyes hold a permanent gleam of barely controlled rage. His hands are covered in scars from weapon training, and when he smiles, you notice that several of his teeth have been filed to points. Today you learn to hurt and be hurt, Eric announces, tossing each of you a wooden practice sword. But understand this, these weapons can still kill you if wielded properly. Fight like your life depends on it, because in 6 months it will. Ulf circles you like a predator sizing up prey, and you immediately understand that this isn't the friendly sparring you might see in a modern martial arts class. This is preparation for actual combat, where hesitation means death and mercy is a luxury neither side can afford. He attacks without warning, bringing his wooden sword down in an arc that would split your skull if it connected properly. You barely get your own weapon up in time to block, and the impact sends shock waves through your arms that make your teeth rattle. But Ulf isn't done. He follows up with a thrust aimed at your solar plexus, and when you dodge sideways, he catches you with the pommel of his sword directly in the temple. Stars explode across your vision, and you taste blood where you've bitten your tongue. This is when the berserker rage kicks in for the first time. It starts as a tingling sensation in your fingertips, but quickly spreads through your entire body like liquid fire. Your vision sharpens to laser focus. Your hearing becomes preternaturally acute. And most importantly, your fear disappears completely. In its place is something much more dangerous: the desire to destroy your opponent by any means necessary. You attack Ulf with a fury that surprises even you. Your wooden sword becomes an extension of your rage, striking with speed and precision that your conscious mind couldn't possibly coordinate. You land a crushing blow to his ribs, follow up with a strike to his shoulder that numbs his sword arm, and finish with a thrust to his stomach that doubles him over. But Ulf is more experienced than you, and he knows how to fight through the rage without being controlled by it. Even as he gasps for breath, he sweeps your legs with his foot, sending you crashing to the ground. Before you can recover, his wooden blade is at your throat. Dead, Eric announces with satisfaction. But not bad for a first attempt. Ulf, explain what happened. He let the rage control him instead of controlling the rage. Ulf pants, blood trickling from his nose. Berserker fury is a weapon, but like any weapon, you must master it or it will destroy you. This is one of the fundamental truths of berserker culture that Hollywood never gets right. The battle fury wasn't just mindless violence. It was a carefully cultivated state of consciousness that enhanced combat effectiveness while maintaining enough tactical awareness to avoid killing your own allies. Historical accounts describe berserkers who could enter and exit the rage state at will, using it strategically during battle rather than being overwhelmed by it. This level of control required years of training and an understanding of their own psychological triggers that bordered on shamanic knowledge. Eric separates you from Ulf and introduces you to individual combat drills. These exercises are designed to build the specific neural pathways that allow a warrior to access superhuman strength and pain tolerance while retaining enough consciousness to fight effectively. The first drill involves standing perfectly still while Eric strikes you with increasing force using a padded club. The goal isn't to block or dodge. It's to absorb the impact without flinching. Training your nervous system to process pain is just another form of sensory input. After 10 minutes of being systematically beaten, something shifts in your perception. The blows still hurt, but the pain feels distant, like it's happening to someone else. This dissociation from physical sensation is exactly what berserkers experienced in battle. allowing them to continue fighting even with wounds that would incapacitate normal warriors. The second drill is even more disturbing. Eric produces a knife and makes a small cut on your forearm. Not deep enough to cause serious damage, but enough to draw blood. Your job is to ignore the wound completely and continue practicing sword forms as if nothing happened. This might seem like pointless cruelty, but it serves a crucial purpose. In medieval combat, minor wounds were inevitable, and a warrior who was distracted by every cut or scrape would quickly become a dead warrior. Berserkers trained themselves to compartmentalize pain so effectively that they could fight through injuries that would stop other men cold. By midday, you're covered in bruises, minor cuts, and what feels like a concussion. But you're also experiencing something unprecedented: total confidence in your ability to inflict violence. The combination of physical conditioning, chemical enhancement, and psychological training has fundamentally altered your relationship with aggression. This transformation comes with a dark side that Berserker legends often gloss over. As your capacity for violence increases, your empathy decreases. The same neural pathways that allow you to ignore your own pain also make it easier to ignore the suffering of others. Eric recognizes this change and addresses it directly. The rage is a gift from Odin, but it comes with responsibility. A berserker who cannot control his fury is no better than a rabid animal, and rabid animals are put down for the safety of the community. He's referring to the historical reality that berserkers were often feared and mistrusted by their own people. While they were valued as elite warriors, they were also seen as dangerous psychopaths who could turn violent without warning. Many berserkers were eventually exiled or killed by their own communities when their behavior became too unpredictable. The afternoon is spent learning group combat tactics. You're joined by 6 other berserker candidates, and together you practice the specific formations and strategies that made Viking warriors so effective in battle. Berserkers didn't fight as individuals. They fought as a coordinated unit designed to break enemy formations through shock and psychological warfare. Your group learns to move as one organism, each warrior covering the other's blind spots while maintaining the aggressive momentum that was their greatest advantage. But the most important lesson comes at the end of the day, when Eric gathers all the candidates around a fire and tells them about the berserkers who didn't survive their training. "Some of you will not complete this path," he says, his scarred face illuminated by the flickering flames. "Some will die from the mushrooms. Others will be killed during combat training. And some will be destroyed by the rage itself, becoming monsters that we'll have to hunt down like wild beasts." This isn't meant to discourage you. It's meant to prepare you for the reality that berserker training had a significant casualty rate. Not everyone who attempted to join the Brotherhood survived the process, and those who did were forever changed by it. As you fall asleep that night, your body aching from the day's violence, you realize that you're already becoming something other than human. The question is whether you'll become the kind of monster that legends are made of, or the kind that legends are written to warn people about. The taste of iron. 2 weeks into your training, and you're about to learn why berserkers were banned throughout medieval Europe. Today, Eric announces you'll participate in your first real combat exercise. Not sparring with wooden weapons, but actual battle using sharpened steel against live opponents. Your target is a rival village that's been raiding your territory's fishing grounds. This isn't a training exercise. It's a legitimate military operation, and you're going along as both participant and final exam. If you survive and prove yourself in actual combat, you'll be one step closer to becoming a full berserker. If you don't survive, well, that solves the problem of your advancement quite permanently. The war party consists of 12 seasoned warriors and 4 berserker candidates, including yourself. You've been assigned a real combat axe, not the practice weapons you've been training with, but an actual instrument of war that's been used to kill men in battle. The weight feels different in your hands now that you know its true purpose. The pre-battle ritual begins at sunset. This isn't the Hollywood version with stirring speeches and dramatic music. This is a shamanic ceremony designed to induce the berserker rage while maintaining enough tactical awareness to function as a combat unit. Eric produces a leather pouch filled with dried mushrooms, but these are different from the ones you've been consuming during training. These are larger, darker, and when you smell them, your nostrils burn as if you've inhaled acid. Amanita muscaria, Eric explains, prepared with additional herbs to enhance the battle fury. Eat them, but remember, you must master the rage or it will master you. The mushrooms taste like death itself, bitter and rotten with an aftertaste that makes you want to vomit. But within minutes, the familiar tingling begins in your extremities, followed by the sharpening of your senses and the gradual dissolution of your fear response. But this time is different. The dosage is stronger, the psychological preparation more intense, and the knowledge that you're about to participate in actual violence adds a level of mental preparation that training can't replicate. As the drugs take effect, Eric begins the war chant, a rhythmic vocalization that seems to resonate in your bones. The other warriors join in, their voices creating a hypnotic drone that amplifies the chemical effects of the mushrooms. Your heartbeat synchronizes with the chant. Your breathing deepens, and slowly, methodically, you begin to lose your humanity. The transformation isn't sudden. It's a gradual slide from normal consciousness into something primal and hungry. Your peripheral vision expands, your muscle tension increases, and most disturbing of all, the idea of killing someone stops being terrifying and starts being exciting. The war party moves through the forest in complete silence, 12 miles of rough terrain covered in under 3 hours. Your enhanced physical state makes the journey feel effortless, as if you're floating through the darkness rather than hiking over broken ground with 40 pounds of weapons and armor. You reach the target village just before dawn, when the inhabitants are at their most vulnerable. The settlement consists of maybe 20 buildings surrounded by a low wooden fence that wouldn't stop a determined child, let alone a berserker war party. Eric's tactical briefing is brutally simple. Kill all the adult males, capture the women and children for slaves, and burn everything that won't be useful as plunder. This isn't warfare as modern people understand it. This is calculated terrorism, designed to acquire resources and eliminate potential threats. The attack begins with the berserkers. You and the other candidates are sent in first, not as shock troops, but as psychological warfare. The sight of near-naked warriors charging out of the pre-dawn darkness, screaming like animals and showing no fear of death, is designed to break enemy morale before the real fighting begins. Your first kill happens so fast you barely register it. A young man emerges from one of the buildings, probably responding to the screams of his neighbors, and you're on him before he can fully process what's happening. Your axe takes him in the chest, splitting his ribs and puncturing his lung, and he goes down in a spray of blood that looks black in the dim light. The berserker rage transforms the act of murder into something mechanical and efficient. There's no hesitation, no moral consideration, no recognition of your victim's humanity. There's only the target, the weapon, and the action required to eliminate the threat. Your second kill is a middle-aged man who's trying to organize some kind of defense. He has a spear and the basic knowledge of how to use it. But he's fighting a chemically enhanced psychopath who's been trained specifically for this kind of close-quarters combat. The fight lasts maybe 30 seconds before your axe opens his throat. By the time the sun rises, the village has been completely destroyed. 23 people are dead, including children who were too young to be useful as slaves. The buildings are burning, sending thick black smoke into the morning sky that will be visible for miles. You're standing in the ruins, covered in blood that isn't your own, holding a weapon that's still dripping with someone else's life. And the most disturbing thing of all is that you feel fantastic. The berserker rage has subsided, but it's been replaced by a euphoric high that makes every sensation more intense. The warmth of the sun on your face, the taste of smoke in the air, the satisfaction of having proven yourself in combat. It all combines into an addictive rush that you immediately want to experience again. This is why berserkers were so dangerous, even to their own communities. The combination of chemical enhancements, psychological conditioning, and the natural endorphin response to violence created warriors who were literally addicted to combat. They needed to fight to feel normal, and the longer they went without violence, the more unstable they became. Eric surveys the destruction with professional satisfaction. "Well done," he tells the surviving candidates. "You've tasted iron and found it to your liking. But remember, this was easy. These were farmers and fishermen, not warriors. Your real test will come when you face enemies who can fight back." The return journey gives you time to process what you've just experienced. You've committed acts that would be classified as war crimes by modern standards. And not only do you feel no guilt about it, you're already planning how to be more efficient next time. This psychological transformation is documented in historical accounts of berserker behavior. Warriors who successfully completed their training often became incapable of functioning in peaceful society, requiring constant opportunities for violence to maintain their mental stability. Back at the training camp, the other warriors treat you differently. You're no longer a candidate. You're a proven killer, someone who's crossed the line from theoretical warrior to actual killer. The change in status comes with privileges, but also with expectations that will shape the rest of your life. That night, as you clean your axe and prepare for the next phase of training, you realize that you've become something that your former self would have found monstrous. But you've also become something that can survive in a world where violence is the ultimate currency. The question is whether you're still human enough to care about the difference. The Wolf's hunger. A month has passed since your first raid, and your transformation into something inhuman is accelerating. You've killed 17 people in 4 separate attacks, and each act of violence has become easier, more natural, more necessary. Today, Eric announces that you're ready for the next phase of berserker training, learning to channel specific animal spirits to enhance your combat effectiveness. A true berserker is not just a warrior, Eric explains as he leads you deeper into the forest than you've ever been before. He is a conduit for the fury of Odin's sacred beasts. Some channel the bear, others the wolf. A few rare warriors can channel the boar. Today, you'll discover which animal spirit calls to you. This isn't metaphorical. It's a literal belief system that was central to berserker culture. Archaeological evidence suggests that different groups of berserkers, identified with specific animals, wore their pelts into battle and believed they could actually transform into these creatures during combat. The ritual takes place in a clearing marked by human skulls mounted on wooden poles. These aren't decorations. They're the remains of berserkers who attempted the transformation ritual and failed, either by dying during the process or by being killed when they became too dangerous to control. Eric produces 3 different animal pelts: bear, wolf, and boar. Each represents a different combat style and spiritual approach to warfare. Bears are solitary fighters with incredible strength and endurance. Wolves fight in packs with speed and coordination. Boars are unpredictable and savage, capable of incredible destruction, but difficult to control. Choose, Eric commands, and somehow you know that this decision will determine not just your fighting style, but your entire identity as a berserker. You're drawn to the wolf pelt. Something about its gray fur and the shape of its skull speaks to a part of your mind that's becoming increasingly feral. When you lift it, the pelt feels warm, as if it's been sitting in sunlight, though the clearing is shaded by thick trees. Eric nods approvingly. Wolf warrior, Wolfhounder, you'll fight with speed and cunning, and you'll never fight alone. But first, you must prove worthy of the wolf spirit. What follows is the most disturbing ritual you've yet experienced. Eric produces a wooden bowl filled with liquid that looks like blood but smells like copper and rotting meat. Wolf's blood, he explains, mixed with the ground bones of warriors who died in battle. Drink it all, and if the wolf spirit accepts you, you'll survive the transformation. If not, he gestures toward the skull-topped poles. The liquid tastes exactly as horrifying as you'd expect. It's thick, metallic, and warm, with chunks of something solid that you try not to think about too carefully. Your stomach rebels immediately, but you force yourself to drain the entire bowl, knowing that hesitation or weakness will end your berserker career permanently. The effect is immediate and overwhelming. The psychoactive compounds in the mixture, probably a combination of psychedelic mushrooms, ergot fungus, and other hallucinogenic substances, hit your system like a chemical sledgehammer. The world around you begins to shift and blur, colors becoming more intense while sounds take on an otherworldly quality. But this time, the hallucinations aren't random. You begin to see wolves moving through the forest around you, their eyes glowing with an intelligence that seems almost human. At first, you think they're threatening you, but gradually you realize they're evaluating you, testing your worthiness to join their pack. The largest wolf approaches you directly, and when you look into its eyes, you see your own reflection, but changed. Your face is leaner, more angular, with prominent canine teeth and eyes that hold a predatory gleam. This isn't metaphor. In your chemically altered state, you're actually beginning to believe that you're transforming into a wolf. Eric's voice comes from somewhere far away, instructing you to embrace the transformation, to let the wolf spirit take control of your human consciousness. You drop to all fours, and suddenly this feels more natural than walking upright. Your hands and knees against the forest floor provide a stability and connection to the earth that your human posture never offered. For the next several hours, you exist in a state that can only be described as temporary lycanthropy. You move through the forest on hands and knees, hunting small animals with your bare hands and teeth, communicating with Eric and the other candidates through growls and howls rather than human speech. This psychological state isn't just drug-induced fantasy. It's a carefully cultivated form of controlled psychosis that allows berserkers to access levels of aggression and physical performance that normal human consciousness can't achieve. Modern psychological research suggests that this kind of dissociative episode can actually enhance pain tolerance, reaction time, and physical strength. When the drugs finally begin to wear off, you find yourself naked, covered in dirt and blood, with the taste of raw rabbit in your mouth. But you've also internalized something fundamental about wolf behavior that will inform your combat style for the rest of your life. Wolves hunt in coordinated packs, using teamwork and communication to bring down prey much larger than themselves. They're patient stalkers who can track their targets for days before striking. Most importantly, they understand that survival depends on the pack's success, not individual glory. Eric helps you to your feet and wraps you in the wolf pelt that will become your primary piece of armor. The fur against your skin feels like coming home, and when you look at your reflection in a nearby stream, the transformation is complete. You no longer look entirely human. The rest of your training focuses on pack tactics and coordination. You're paired with 3 other wolf warriors, and together you learn to fight as a single unit. Your individual skills become less important than your ability to coordinate attacks, communicate silently, and support your packmates in combat. The psychological effects of the wolf transformation extend beyond combat. You begin to think differently about loyalty, hierarchy, and social relationships. Your human attachments fade, replaced by intense bonds with your packmates that supersede all other considerations, including family ties and personal safety. This transformation comes with serious social consequences. Your family begins to treat you like a dangerous stranger. Your childhood friends avoid you, and the local community regards you with a mixture of respect and fear. You're becoming something that exists outside normal human society, a weapon that's useful in war but problematic in peace. Eric explains that this alienation is intentional. A berserker who maintains too many human attachments is compromised in battle. You cannot hesitate to kill because you're worried about returning home to your wife. You can't hold back in combat because you're concerned about what your mother would think. The wolf spirit burns away these weaknesses. But the most disturbing change is in your relationship with violence itself. What once required chemical enhancement and psychological preparation now feels natural and necessary. You begin to crave combat the way normal people crave food or sleep, and the longer you go without fighting, the more unstable you become. This addiction to violence is documented in historical accounts of berserkers who became increasingly difficult to control during peacetime. Some were sent on constant raiding expeditions to prevent them from turning on their own communities. Others were simply exiled when their behavior became too unpredictable. As your Wolf Spirit training nears completion, Eric presents you with your first major challenge as a pack hunter. Your group has been assigned to track and eliminate a rival berserker who's gone rogue, killing indiscriminately and terrorizing the local population. This isn't just a combat mission. It's a reminder that the same forces that create legendary warriors can also create monsters that must be destroyed for the greater good. And as you prepare for this hunt, you can't help wondering which category you're falling into. The breaking point. It's been 3 months since you began berserker training, and something is seriously wrong with your mind. The constant exposure to violence, hallucinogenic substances, and psychological conditioning has fundamentally altered your brain chemistry in ways that would horrify modern medical professionals. Today, you're going to learn why the average berserker career lasted only about 5 years before the warrior either died in battle or had to be killed by his own people. You wake up in your hut, but you're not sure if you actually slept or just experienced another drug-induced blackout. Your memories of the past week are fragmented and disturbing. Flashes of combat, the taste of blood, screams that might have been your own. Your hands are covered in cuts and bruises that you don't remember receiving, and there's dried blood under your fingernails that definitely isn't yours. Eric finds you sitting by the cold remains of last night's fire, staring at nothing while unconsciously sharpening your axe with smooth, repetitive strokes. You've been doing this for hours, he tells you, completely unaware of the passage of time. This dissociative behavior is a common symptom of what modern psychiatrists would recognize as severe PTSD combined with chronic drug abuse. The Wolf Spirit is fighting with your human mind, Eric observes, settling beside you with the casual air of someone who's seen this transformation many times before. This is the breaking point. Either you learn to control both aspects of your nature, or one will destroy the other. He's referring to the documented psychological crisis that berserkers experienced as their training neared completion. The combination of battlefield trauma, chemical dependency, and systematic dehumanization created warriors who were incredibly effective in combat, but increasingly unstable in all other aspects of life. Your breakfast consists of dried meat and fermented milk, but you can barely taste it. Your sensory perception has been altered by months of drug use and psychological conditioning to the point where normal experiences feel muted and distant. Only violence seems real anymore. Only combat makes you feel fully alive. This morning's training exercise is designed to test your psychological stability under extreme stress. Eric leads you to a pit that's been dug behind the training grounds, roughly 10 feet deep and 6 feet across, with wooden spikes embedded in the bottom. This isn't a trap for enemies. This is where unstable berserkers are disposed of when they become too dangerous to remain alive. Today, you fight your pack brother Gunnar to the death, Eric announces casually. One of you will climb out of this pit. The other will feed the ravens. Gunnar is another wolf warrior who's been training alongside you for the past month. You fought together, bled together, and shared the same psychological journey from human to something else. The idea of killing him should be unthinkable, but instead, you feel a surge of excitement at the prospect of testing your skills against a worthy opponent. This is exactly what Eric intended. The berserker conditioning has systematically eroded your capacity for human empathy and attachment, replacing these emotions with a predatory hunger that can only be satisfied through violence. You're becoming a perfectly efficient killing machine, but you're losing your humanity in the process. Gunnar meets your eyes as you both descend into the pit. and you see the same predatory gleam that you know is reflected in your own gaze. Neither of you questions the necessity of this fight or considers the possibility of refusing to participate. The wolf spirit has taken control, and wolves understand that pack hierarchy is established through combat. The fight begins without ceremony or warning. Gunnar attacks first, his axe whistling through the air toward your head with enough force to split your skull like a melon. You dodge by inches, feeling the wind from his blade ruffle your hair, and counter with a thrust aimed at his solar plexus. But Gunnar is as well trained as you are, and he turns your thrust aside with his shield, while simultaneously striking at your knee with the butt of his axe handle. The blow connects, sending a shock of pain up your leg that would have dropped a normal person. But you're not normal anymore, and the pain just feeds the rage burning in your chest. The confined space of the pit makes traditional combat techniques impossible. There's no room for elaborate sword work or strategic maneuvering. This is close-quarters butchery, where victory goes to whoever can inflict the most damage in the shortest time. Your axe catches Gunnar across the ribs, opening a gash that sprays blood across the pit walls. He responds by grabbing your throat with his free hand, trying to crush your windpipe while bringing his weapon around toward your spine. You knee him in the groin hard enough to lift him off his feet, then follow up with an elbow strike to his temple that sends him staggering backward. But Gunnar isn't finished. Even as blood streams down his face, he launches himself at you with the kind of berserk fury that made Viking warriors legendary. His axe becomes a blur of deadly motion, forcing you to give ground until your back is pressed against the pit wall. This is when the wolf spirit takes complete control. Your conscious mind steps aside, replaced by something purely predatory and instinctual. Your movements become fluid and effortless, guided by reflexes honed through months of training and chemical enhancement. You duck under Gunnar's wild swing, drive your axe deep into his side, and twist the blade to maximize the internal damage. Gunnar drops to his knees, his hands trying futilely to hold his intestines inside his body. He looks up at you with eyes that are still human enough to show surprise and betrayal. This was supposed to be your pack brother, your closest ally in combat. Instead, you've just killed him with the same casual efficiency you'd use to slaughter a farm animal. The most disturbing part is that you feel absolutely nothing about his death. No guilt, no remorse, no sense of loss. If anything, you feel satisfied, as if you just completed a necessary task. This complete absence of empathy is the final stage of berserker conditioning, the point where the warrior becomes something that can no longer function in human society. Eric helps you climb out of the pit, his expression unreadable. "Well done," he says simply. "You've proven that the wolf spirit is stronger than your human attachments. But remember, this is what you are now. You cannot go back." He's absolutely correct. The psychological transformation you've undergone is irreversible with the medical knowledge available in 9th century Scandinavia. You've been systematically conditioned to respond to stress and conflict with lethal violence, and those neural pathways can't simply be switched off when the fighting stops. The rest of the day is spent in individual training designed to help you maintain some semblance of self-control. When you're not in combat, you practice meditation techniques that are supposed to quiet the wolf spirit, perform repetitive tasks that require concentration and patience, and work on basic social interactions that don't involve killing anyone. But it's like trying to contain a forest fire with a garden hose. The rage and hunger for violence are always just beneath the surface, requiring constant effort to keep them in check. And the longer you go without fighting, the more difficult the control becomes. Eric explains that this is why berserkers were often kept on permanent military campaigns or sent on long raiding expeditions. A berserker in peacetime was like a sword that never returned to its sheath, useful as a weapon, but dangerous to everyone around it. As night falls, you sit alone in your hut, methodically sharpening your weapons while trying to make sense of what you've become. 3 months ago, you were a normal young man with hopes, dreams, and human connections. Now you're a chemical-dependent psychopath whose only purpose is to kill enemies as efficiently as possible. The worst part is that you can't even regret the transformation. The human emotions that would allow you to feel loss or nostalgia for your former life have been systematically destroyed by your training. You exist in a permanent present tense focused solely on the next opportunity for violence. Tomorrow, Eric tells you you'll begin preparing for the final test of your Berserker training, a solo raid against impossible odds, where you'll either prove yourself worthy of joining the elite brotherhood or die in the attempt. Either outcome, you realize, would be preferable to remaining trapped in this liminal state between human and monster. The blood price, 6 months of training, have transformed you into something that would be unrecognizable to your former self. And today marks the beginning of your final test. Eric has assigned you a solo mission that epitomizes everything terrifying about Berserker warfare. You're going to infiltrate and destroy a fortified enemy position single-handedly, or die in the attempt. Your target is a Saxon stronghold 40 miles south of your territory, a stone watchtower, surrounded by wooden palisades and defended by at least 20 trained soldiers. This isn't a raid against helpless farmers or a coordinated attack with your packmates. This is a suicide mission designed to test whether you've fully internalized the Berserker mindset that values death in battle above all other considerations. The pre-mission ritual is more intense than anything you've experienced before. Eric produces a leather pouch containing what he calls Odin's Gift, a concentrated mixture of psychoactive mushrooms, ergot fungus, and other hallucinogenic compounds that's designed to induce the deepest possible Berserker trance. This will either make you invincible or kill you outright. He warns as he measures out a dose that looks sufficient to poison a horse. But remember, a true Berserker welcomes death in battle. If you die fighting, Odin will welcome you to Valhalla. If you die from fear or hesitation, your spirit will wander the gray wastes of hell for eternity. The drug mixture tastes like death itself, but you force it down knowing that your survival depends on achieving the kind of altered consciousness that allows ordinary humans to perform impossible feats of violence. Within minutes, the familiar tingling begins in your extremities, followed by the gradual dissolution of your fear response and the emergence of something purely predatory. But this dose is different from anything you've consumed before. Your vision begins to shift and blur, colors becoming impossibly vivid, while sounds take on an otherworldly quality. More disturbing, you begin to see things that aren't there, or at least, things that shouldn't be there. You see your wolf spirit padding alongside you as you make your way through the forest, its eyes glowing with supernatural intelligence. You see the spirits of dead warriors offering guidance and encouragement. Most unsettling of all, you begin to see your enemies before you encounter them, as if the drug has given you some form of supernatural awareness. Modern neuroscience suggests that extreme doses of psychoactive substances can actually enhance certain cognitive functions while suppressing others. Pattern recognition improves, reaction time accelerates, and pain tolerance increases dramatically. But these benefits come at the cost of rational thought, emotional control, and basic human empathy. The journey to the Saxon stronghold takes you through terrain that would challenge a normal person. But in your chemically enhanced state, you move through the forest like a predator in its natural habitat. Your enhanced senses allow you to avoid patrols, detect ambush before they're sprung, and navigate in complete darkness using only sound and smell. You reach the enemy position just before dawn, when the guards are at their most complacent. The stronghold is exactly as Eric described, a stone tower surrounded by wooden walls, with guards posted at regular intervals and a single heavily defended gate. A direct assault would be impossible for a conventional force, let alone a single warrior. But you're not a conventional warrior anymore. You're a chemically enhanced psychopath with 6 months of specialized training in single combat techniques and a complete disregard for your own survival. The tactical situation that would deter any rational person just looks like an interesting challenge. Your attack begins with psychological warfare. Instead of trying to infiltrate silently, you announce your presence with a howl that echoes off the stone walls. Part war cry, part wolf call, and part expression of pure bloodlust. The sound freezes the guards with primal terror, activating fears that go back to humanity's earliest encounters with apex predators. You scale the wooden palisade with inhuman speed and agility, your enhanced physical state making the climb feel effortless. The first guard you encounter is so shocked by your sudden appearance that he doesn't even attempt to draw his weapon before your axe opens his throat. The second guard manages to raise an alarm before you kill him, but his shouts of warning are mixed with screams of terror that do more to demoralize his allies than organize them. You're not just attacking their position, you're attacking their sanity, presenting them with something that violates their understanding of what's humanly possible. The confined space of the stronghold works to your advantage. The defenders can't effectively coordinate their response, and their superior numbers actually become a liability as they get in each other's way, trying to engage you. Your Berserker training focused specifically on this kind of close-quarters combat, where traditional military tactics break down. Your axe becomes an extension of your drug-fueled rage, moving with speed and precision that your conscious mind couldn't possibly coordinate. You cut down guards with mechanical efficiency, each kill feeding the bloodlust that drives you forward. Within 10 minutes, half the garrison is dead or dying, and the survivors are beginning to break and run. But the mission isn't just about killing guards. It's about destroying the stronghold itself. You need to eliminate this position as a strategic asset, which means bringing down the stone watchtower that serves as its primary defensive feature. This is where your months of specialized training prove their worth. Berserkers weren't just warriors. They were also demolition experts who understood how to destroy fortifications using the tools available in medieval warfare. You know exactly where to place incendiary charges to bring down the tower's wooden supports. The charges are simple but effective. Bundles of pitch-soaked cloth that will burn hot enough to weaken the tower's structural integrity. You plant them while fighting off the remaining defenders. Your enhanced physical state, allowing you to multitask in ways that would be impossible under normal circumstances. When the charges ignite, the effect is spectacular. The wooden supports burn through in minutes, bringing down tons of stone that crush anything unfortunate enough to be underneath. The sound of the collapse can be heard for miles, announcing to anyone within range that the Saxon stronghold no longer exists. But your mission still isn't complete. Eric's instructions were explicit. No survivors. Everyone in the stronghold must die, not just to eliminate witnesses, but to send a message that will terrorize other enemy positions. This kind of psychological warfare was a cornerstone of Viking strategy. The final phase of your assault is the most disturbing. You hunt down the surviving defenders one by one, tracking them through the ruins like a predator pursuing wounded prey. Some try to fight, others attempt to flee, and a few simply surrender and beg for mercy. Your response to all of them is identical. Swift, efficient death delivered without hesitation or remorse. By the time the sun reaches its zenith, the Saxon stronghold has been completely destroyed. 23 enemies are dead. The watchtower is rubble, and the entire position has been eliminated as a strategic asset. You've accomplished something that a conventional military force would have required dozens of casualties to achieve. More importantly, you've proven that your berserker conditioning is complete. You've demonstrated the ability to operate independently under extreme stress, execute complex tactical operations while under the influence of powerful drugs, and kill without hesitation or moral consideration. But as the chemical high begins to fade, you're left with the aftermath of what you've accomplished. You're standing in a charnel house of your own creation, covered in blood that isn't your own, surrounded by the corpses of men who were just doing their duty, defending their homeland. The human part of your mind tries to process the moral implications of what you've done, but that capacity for ethical reasoning has been systematically destroyed by your training. Instead of guilt or remorse, you feel only satisfaction at having completed your mission successfully. The return journey gives you time to reflect on what you've become. 6 months ago, the idea of single-handedly destroying a fortified position would have seemed impossible. Now it feels like just another day at work. You've become a weapon so effective that you terrify even yourself. When you finally reach the training camp, Eric is waiting for you with an expression of grim satisfaction. He doesn't need to ask about the mission's success. The blood on your weapons and clothes tells the story clearly enough. You have proven yourself worthy, he announces formally. You are no longer a candidate. You are Berserker, the sacred madness. Your transformation into a full Berserker comes with privileges that would seem like rewards to an outsider, but feel more like curses to someone who understands their true cost. You're now entitled to wear the wolf pelt that marks you as one of Odin's chosen warriors. Carry the sacred weapons that have been blessed by the war god himself, and participate in the secret rituals that maintain the Berserker Brotherhood's connection to the spirit world. But these privileges come with responsibilities that will consume the rest of your life. You're now part of an elite military unit that exists outside normal social structures, bound by oaths that supersede all human loyalties, including family ties, romantic relationships, and basic moral considerations. You belong to Odin now, and the Allfather is a demanding master. The formal initiation ceremony takes place during the winter solstice, when the barrier between the physical and spiritual worlds is at its weakest. You and 3 other newly certified berserkers are led to a sacred grove that's been used for these rituals for generations, marked by standing stones carved with runic inscriptions that hurt to look at directly. Eric has been joined by the other berserker masters, scarred veterans whose very presence seems to distort the air around them. These are men who've spent decades channeling divine fury, and the experience has left them only partially human. Their eyes hold a permanent gleam of barely controlled violence, and when they speak, their voices carry undertones that remind you of wolves growling. The ritual begins at midnight with the sacrifice of a captured enemy warrior. This isn't gratuitous cruelty. It's a religious necessity designed to consecrate the ceremony and demonstrate your complete commitment to the Berserker path. The prisoner is a Saxon raider who was captured during a recent skirmish, and his death will serve both practical and spiritual purposes. You're handed the ritual knife and instructed to perform the sacrifice according to ancient traditions. The blade is made of meteoric iron and inscribed with runes that seem to shift and writhe in the flickering torchlight. When you grip the handle, the metal feels warm, as if it's drawing heat from your body. The prisoner meets your eyes as you approach, and you see a mixture of fear and resignation that would have affected your human self deeply. But that capacity for empathy was systematically destroyed during your training, replaced by the cold efficiency that makes berserkers so effective in combat. The killing stroke is swift and precise, opening the prisoner's throat in a spray of arterial blood that spatters across the carved stones. But this isn't just execution. It's ritual murder designed to channel the victim's life force into enhancing your connection to Odin's war spirit. As the blood pools around the standing stones, something fundamental shifts in your perception of reality. The boundary between the physical and spiritual worlds begins to dissolve, allowing you to see things that normal human consciousness can't perceive. You see the prisoner's spirit departing his body, but instead of moving toward whatever afterlife awaits him, it's drawn into the ritual space and absorbed by the assembled berserkers. This spiritual cannibalism is the source of the berserkers' supernatural abilities. By consuming the life force of their enemies, these warriors gain access to strength, speed, and endurance that exceeds normal human limitations. But this power comes at the cost of their own humanity, gradually transforming them into something that exists outside the natural order. The next phase of the ceremony involves the consumption of a drug mixture that makes your previous chemical experiences seem mild by comparison. The concoction contains concentrated extracts from a dozen different psychoactive plants, animal venoms that induce specific neurological effects, and what Eric claims is ground bone from legendary berserkers who achieved mythical status. The mixture burns your throat like liquid fire and hits your system with the force of a physical blow. Within minutes, your perception of reality undergoes a complete transformation. The forest around you becomes alive with supernatural energy. The carved stones pulse with inner light, and the other berserkers begin to take on their true forms as avatars of divine violence. But the most dramatic change is in your own body. You can feel your muscles expanding, your bones becoming denser, your nervous system accelerating to superhuman speeds. Whether these changes are real or hallucinatory doesn't matter. In your altered state, the distinction between physical and spiritual reality has ceased to exist. This is the sacred madness that gives berserkers their legendary abilities. It's a chemically induced psychosis that allows warriors to access reservoirs of strength and fury that normal human consciousness keeps safely locked away. But it's also a form of controlled possession that gradually erodes the boundary between the warrior and the war spirit he channels. The initiation continues with combat trials designed to test your ability to function while completely detached from normal human consciousness. You're required to fight multiple opponents simultaneously while blindfolded. Demonstrate your ability to ignore wounds that would incapacitate normal warriors, and prove that you can enter and exit the berserker rage at will. These tests aren't just evaluations. They're educational experiences that teach you to navigate the altered states of consciousness that will define the rest of your life. You learn to compartmentalize different aspects of your personality, accessing your human intelligence when planning operations while channeling pure animal fury during combat. The final trial is the most disturbing. You're required to kill a member of your own family to prove that your loyalty to the Berserker Brotherhood supersedes all human attachments. This isn't metaphorical. It's a literal requirement that ensures no berserker can be compromised by emotional connections that might interfere with military effectiveness. Your victim is your younger brother, who's been drugged and brought to the sacred grove specifically for this purpose. He's barely conscious, but aware enough to recognize you as you approach with the ritual knife. The look of confusion and betrayal in his eyes would have destroyed your human self. But your berserker conditioning allows you to complete the task with mechanical efficiency. This fratricide serves multiple purposes beyond just testing your loyalty. It severs your last connection to normal human society, ensuring that you can never return to your previous life. It also provides another spiritual sacrifice to enhance your connection to Odin's war spirit. Most importantly, it demonstrates to the other berserkers that you're willing to pay any price required for membership in their brotherhood. As your brother's blood mingles with that of the Saxon prisoner, the spiritual energy in the grove reaches a crescendo that borders on overwhelming. The boundary between individual consciousness begins to dissolve, allowing you to experience direct communion with the war god himself. Odin appears not as the wise ruler depicted in later mythologies, but as the primal force of violence and destruction that governs all warfare. He's a presence rather than a person, a concentration of fury and hunger that promises infinite power in exchange for complete submission to the warrior's path. The god's voice speaks directly into your mind, bypassing your ears entirely. The words aren't in any human language, but you understand them perfectly. You are mine now, Wolf Warrior. Your life, your death, your every breath belongs to war. Fight well, and I will grant you strength beyond mortal limitations. Fail me, and I will cast your spirit into the void. This divine compact is the source of the berserker's supernatural abilities, but it's also a form of spiritual slavery that consumes everything human about the warrior. You've traded your soul for the power to kill with superhuman efficiency, and the transaction can never be reversed. As dawn breaks over the sacred grove, the ceremony concludes with the formal presentation of your berserker weapons and regalia. These aren't just tools of war. They're sacred objects that have been consecrated, through generations of ritual use and human sacrifice. Your axe bears runes that promise swift death to your enemies. Your wolf pelt carries the spiritual essence of the pack that will fight alongside you. Most importantly, you receive the Berserker's most sacred possession, a drinking horn made from the skull of a legendary warrior, designed to hold the blood of enemies killed in personal combat. You are no longer human. You are Berserker, and the only question now is whether you'll die gloriously in battle or live long, enough to become something that even your fellow warriors will eventually need to hunt down and destroy. The Endless War. 2 years have passed since your initiation, and you've become exactly what the Berserker training was designed to create. A perfect killing machine completely divorced from human emotion or moral consideration. You've participated in 43 raids, killed over 200 enemies in personal combat, and consumed enough hallucinogenic substances to permanently alter your brain chemistry in ways that modern medicine would consider irreversible. But the most disturbing change isn't physical, it's psychological. You've developed what can only be described as an addiction to violence that requires increasingly extreme stimulation to satisfy. Simple combat no longer provides the rush you need to feel fully alive. You've begun seeking out more dangerous opponents, more challenging tactical situations, more opportunities to push your enhanced abilities to their absolute limits. This morning finds you standing on the deck of a Viking longship, watching the English coastline grow larger as your war party approaches its next target. The monastery of Lindisfarne sits on its rocky island like a jewel waiting to be plucked, filled with treasures that will fund another season of warfare and monks who will provide the blood sacrifice necessary to maintain your spiritual connection to Odin. Your role in the attack has evolved beyond simple shock trooper. You're now the pack leader of 12 other berserkers, responsible for coordinating the initial assault that will break enemy resistance and allow the regular warriors to complete the conquest. This isn't just military leadership, it's a form of spiritual guidance that requires you to channel and direct the collective fury of your pack. The pre-battle ritual has become more elaborate as your status within the Brotherhood has increased. You no longer just consume the sacred mushrooms, you prepare them yourself, mixing specific combinations of psychoactive compounds based on the tactical requirements of each mission. Today's mixture includes Amanita muscaria for the basic berserker rage, ergot fungus for enhanced visual perception, and powdered human bone for spiritual connection to the war god. But you've also added something new, a compound extracted from the glands of rabid wolves that induces a form of controlled madness even more extreme than the traditional berserker fury. This substance is so dangerous that even other berserkers consider it suicidal. But your addiction to violence has progressed to the point where normal levels of chemical enhancement no longer provide adequate stimulation. The effect is immediate and overwhelming. Your perception of reality fragments into kaleidoscopic patterns that somehow enhance rather than impair your tactical awareness. You can see the monastery's defenses with supernatural clarity, identifying weak points and blind spots that would be invisible to normal vision. More importantly, you can sense the fear radiating from the monks who have spotted your approaching ships. The landing is accomplished with the precision that comes from years of coordinated operations. Your berserker pack hits the beach first, howling like the wolves they become and displaying a complete disregard for personal safety that terrifies enemies and allies alike. The monastery's few guards, mostly elderly men armed with farming tools, break and run before you even reach their defensive positions. But running won't save them. You've become something that views human beings as nothing more than mobile targets, and your enhanced physical abilities make escape impossible for anyone who isn't similarly enhanced. You overtake the fleeing guards within 50 yards, cutting them down with efficiency that would impress a modern military observer. The monastery's main buildings are designed for prayer and contemplation, not warfare. The heavy wooden doors that might stop conventional raiders are no obstacle for berserkers who've been enhanced with supernatural strength. You kick through the entrance to the main chapel like it's made of paper, confronting a dozen terrified monks who've gathered around their altar to pray for divine intervention. Their prayers will not be answered. What follows is systematic slaughter designed to accomplish multiple objectives. The monks must die to eliminate witnesses and provide blood sacrifice to Odin. But their deaths must also serve as psychological warfare, sending a message to other potential targets about the futility of resistance against berserker war parties. You kill them slowly, ensuring that their screams can be heard throughout the monastery complex. This isn't gratuitous sadism. It's calculated terrorism designed to break the morale of any remaining defenders and enhance the spiritual energy available for your war magic. The abbot is reserved for special treatment. As the monastery's spiritual leader, his death carries particular significance in the supernatural economy that governs berserker warfare. You drag him to the altar where he spent his life serving his gentle god, and offer him to Odin in a ritual that would have been familiar to warriors 1,000 years before Christianity reached these shores. The blood flows across the altar's stone surface in patterns that seem to form runic inscriptions, messages from the war god expressing his satisfaction with the offering. In your chemically altered state, you can read these blood runes as clearly as written text, receiving tactical guidance and spiritual encouragement directly from divine sources. But the raid's primary objective isn't religious, it's economic. Medieval monasteries were essentially banks, accumulating wealth through donations and land ownership that made them attractive targets for Viking raiders. The Lindisfarne Monastery contains enough gold and silver to fund your war party's operations for an entire season. The treasure room is hidden beneath the main chapel, protected by locks and barriers that would challenge normal thieves. But berserkers approach problem-solving with the same overwhelming violence they bring to combat. Instead of picking locks or solving puzzles, you simply tear the reinforced door off its hinges with your bare hands. The wealth inside is staggering. Golden chalices, silver plates, jeweled religious artifacts, and chests filled with coins from across the known world. But the most valuable treasure isn't monetary. It's the monastery's library, containing books and scrolls that provide intelligence about English defenses, political situations, and potential future targets. Your pack works with mechanical efficiency to secure the valuables while eliminating any remaining resistance. This isn't the chaotic looting that characterizes less disciplined raiders. It's a professional, military operation executed by warriors who've transcended normal human limitations through chemical enhancement and spiritual transformation. As the monastery burns behind you, painting the evening sky the color of fresh blood, you feel the familiar satisfaction that comes from successfully completing a complex mission. But underneath that satisfaction is a gnawing hunger for more violence, more extreme challenges, more opportunities to test your ever-increasing capabilities against worthy opponents. This addiction is the berserker's ultimate curse. The same chemical and spiritual processes that grant supernatural abilities also create an insatiable need for stimulation that can only be satisfied through increasingly extreme violence. Many berserkers eventually become so dependent on combat that they're unable to function during peacetime, requiring constant warfare to maintain their psychological stability. The return voyage gives you time to reflect on what you've become and where your path is leading. You've achieved everything that berserker training promised: supernatural strength, enhanced combat abilities, and spiritual connection to divine forces. But you've also lost everything that made you human: emotional connections, moral considerations, and the ability to find satisfaction in anything other than violence. Your fellow berserkers share this curse, creating a brotherhood bound together by their mutual addiction to warfare and their gradual transformation into something that exists outside normal human society. You understand each other in ways that normal people never could, but you're also increasingly isolated from the communities you theoretically serve. As your longship cuts through the dark waters toward home, you find yourself planning the next raid. The next opportunity to feed the hunger that grows stronger with every kill. You know that this path leads inevitably to death in battle or exile from human society. That those outcomes seem preferable to the alternative of trying to live as something you're no longer capable of being. The eternal war continues, and you are its willing prisoner. The price of gods. 5 years have passed since your initiation, and you've become a legend whispered about in enemy territories from Scotland to Constantinople. They call you Grimmer the Wolfmad, the berserker who's never been defeated in single combat, who's led successful raids against impossible odds, and who's consumed so many hallucinogenic substances that he's more spirit than flesh. But legends, you've discovered, are prisons built from other people's fears and expectations. You're standing in the ruins of what was once your family's village, looking at the charred remains of the hut where you were born. The settlement was attacked by Saxon raiders 3 weeks ago, not because it held any strategic value, but because it was known to be the home of the infamous berserker, who's been terrorizing English monasteries for half a decade. Your family died because of your reputation. Your mother's bones are scattered among the ashes, along with those of your remaining siblings and the neighbors who tried to protect them. The Saxons didn't just kill them, they tortured them first, trying to extract information about your habits, your weaknesses, anything that might help them plan an ambush. When the villagers had nothing useful to tell, they were burned alive as a message to other communities that harbored berserkers. You should feel something about this discovery. Rage, grief, a desire for revenge. Any normal human emotion would be appropriate. But 5 years of chemical conditioning and spiritual transformation have burned away your capacity for such feelings. You examine the bones with the same detached interest you'd show to any other battlefield debris. This emotional numbness is the final stage of berserker evolution. The point where the warrior becomes so divorced from human feeling that he can no longer function in civilian society. You've achieved the perfect state of living weaponry, but the cost has been everything that once made you a person rather than just a tool for killing. Eric finds you in the ruins, though you're not surprised by his arrival. The Berserker Brotherhood maintains a network of supernatural communication that allows masters to track their students across vast distances. Whether this connection is achieved through shared drug experiences, spiritual communion with Odin, or simple tactical intelligence gathering doesn't matter. What matters is that privacy is an illusion for warriors who've surrendered their souls to the war god. I know what you're thinking, Eric says, settling beside you among the scattered bones. You're wondering if this is your fault, if your family died because of choices you made. But that's human thinking, and you're not human anymore. He's absolutely correct, but that correctness feels like another loss rather than wisdom. The ability to feel guilt or responsibility would at least prove that some part of your original self survived. The Berserker transformation. Instead, you're looking at your mother's skull with the same emotional response you'd have to a piece of broken pottery. There's something else, Eric continues, and his tone carries a weight that penetrates even your chemically altered consciousness. The king has issued an edict. Berserkers are to be outlawed throughout all Norse territories, effective immediately. We're being disbanded. The news should be shocking, but it feels inevitable. Berserkers have always existed on the margins of society, tolerated because their military value outweighed their social cost. But as Viking culture evolves and becomes more civilized, there's less room for warriors who can't function outside of combat situations. The official reason for the ban is Christianity's growing influence in Scandinavian politics. The new religion doesn't tolerate the pagan rituals that maintain berserker spiritual connections. And Christian kings are uncomfortable with warriors who claim divine authority from pre-Christian gods. But the real reason is more practical. Berserkers have become too dangerous to control. Recent incidents have included berserkers turning on their own allies during battle, killing civilians for no tactical reason, and refusing to acknowledge royal authority when it conflicts with their interpretation of Odin's will. The Brotherhood that once served as the Norse military's elite Shock Troops has become a collection of drug-addicted psychopaths who threaten social stability. What happens to us? You ask, though you already know the answer. Some will accept exile and spend their remaining years raiding in foreign territories. Others will try to integrate back into normal society, though that rarely ends well. Eric's scarred face shows the first emotion you've seen from him in years, something that might be regret. And some will choose the warrior's death, going out in battles where survival is impossible. All of these options lead to the same destination: death. Berserkers who try to live peaceful lives inevitably succumb to their addiction to violence, usually ending their careers by killing civilians and being executed as criminals. Those who continue raiding eventually encounter enemies capable of killing them. The warrior's death is just a more honest acknowledgement of the inevitable outcome. But there's a fourth option that Eric doesn't mention because it's too terrible to speak aloud: becoming something so monstrous that even other berserkers will hunt you down. Some warriors, driven mad by years of chemical abuse and spiritual possession, transform into creatures that exist only to kill. They lose the last vestiges of human reasoning and become pure expressions of violence that threaten everyone around them. You can feel that transformation beginning in yourself. The boundaries between your human consciousness and the wolf spirit have blurred to the point where you're no longer sure which thoughts are your own. Your dreams are filled with images of killing that feel more real than your waking experiences. Most disturbing, you've begun to view other people as potential prey rather than fellow human beings. The conversation with Eric is interrupted by the arrival of a messenger, a young warrior who approaches with the nervous reverence reserved for legendary figures. He brings word that a Saxon army is marching north, seeking to eliminate the berserker threat once and for all. They've brought superior numbers, better equipment, and most importantly, Christian priests who claim the power to neutralize pagan war magic. This is your opportunity for the warrior's death, the chance to end your story with a battle glorious enough to earn admission to Valhalla. The alternative is a slow descent into madness that will end with your own people hunting you like a rabid animal. The final battle takes place on a windswept plain where your ancestors once fought Celtic tribes for control of the territory. Your war party consists of 43 berserkers, all that remains of the brotherhood that once terrorized Europe, facing nearly 300 Saxon soldiers supported by cavalry and siege equipment. The pre-battle ritual is the most intense you've ever experienced. With nothing left to lose, the berserkers consume drug doses that would kill normal humans, seeking to achieve such complete spiritual transformation that they become temporary incarnations of divine violence. The sacred mushrooms are supplemented with compounds so toxic that half the warriors won't survive the chemical enhancement, let alone the battle. As the drugs take effect, you feel your individual consciousness dissolving into something larger and more terrible. You're no longer Grimmer the Wolfmad. You're a fragment of Odin's war aspect, given temporary form to serve as an instrument of destruction. Your human memories fade, replaced by the accumulated fury of every warrior who's ever died in battle. The charge begins with the traditional berserker howl, but amplified by 43 enhanced voices until it becomes something that seems to shake the earth itself. The sound alone breaks the morale of some Saxon soldiers who flee before the battle even begins. Those who remain show the kind of courage that makes death in battle meaningful. What follows is the kind of combat that spawns legends. Berserkers enhanced to superhuman levels clash with disciplined soldiers fighting for their homeland and their faith. Weapons shatter, armor fails, and the earth becomes soaked with enough blood to mud the ground for yards around the battle site. You fight with abilities that transcend human limitations. Your enhanced strength, allowing you to cleave through mail armor. Your supernatural speed, making enemy attacks seem sluggish and predictable. But the Saxons have advantages too. Superior numbers, better tactical coordination, and most importantly, the kind of desperate courage that comes from defending everything they hold sacred. One by one, your berserker brothers fall to accumulated wounds, exhaustion, or simple bad luck. Each death diminishes the pack's collective strength, while your enemies maintain their numerical advantage through disciplined formations and mutual support. But even as defeat becomes inevitable, you feel something approaching peace for the first time in years. This is what you were created for. Not the raids against helpless monasteries or the slaughter of unarmed civilians, but honest combat against worthy opponents who can fight back effectively. As your vision begins to darken from blood loss and exhaustion, you see Odin's ravens circling overhead, come to collect the souls of warriors who've died with weapons in their hands. The war god has kept his bargain. In exchange for your humanity, he's granted you strength beyond mortal limitations and a death worthy of legend. The last thing you see before consciousness fades is Eric falling beside you, his scarred face finally showing peace as he achieves the warrior's death that all berserkers ultimately seek. The Brotherhood dies with him, ending an era of warfare that shaped the character of an entire civilization. Your story becomes one of the sagas that will be told around fires for generations, a reminder of what happens when humans attempt to channel forces beyond their understanding. You achieved everything that Berserker training promised: supernatural abilities, legendary status, and a glorious death in battle. But the price was everything that made you human. Conclusion. And there you have it, the brutal, unvarnished truth about what it really meant to be a Viking Berserker. Not the romanticized Hollywood version with perfectly choreographed fight scenes and heroic speeches, but the reality of systematically destroying your own humanity in service to a war god who demanded everything in exchange for temporary power. You wouldn't have lasted a day as a berserker, and honestly, that's probably a mercy. The physical conditioning alone would have broken most modern people, but the psychological transformation is what would have truly destroyed you. The systematic erosion of empathy, the chemical dependency that rewired your brain, the spiritual possession that gradually consumed your individual identity. These aren't prices that any sane person would willingly pay. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect of the Berserker path is how effective it was. These weren't random psychopaths or drug-addled madmen. They were precisely engineered killing machines, created through generations of accumulated knowledge about human psychology, combat effectiveness, and the supernatural forces that govern warfare. The Berserker Brotherhood understood something about violence that modern civilization has forgotten, that the capacity for extreme aggression exists in every human being, waiting to be awakened through the right combination of chemical enhancement, psychological conditioning, and spiritual transformation. They took ordinary young men and turned them into weapons that could accomplish impossible military objectives through sheer ferocity and supernatural enhancement. But they also understood the cost. The same processes that created legendary warriors also created monsters that eventually had to be hunted down by their own people. The Berserker path was always a deal with the devil. Temporary power in exchange for everything that made you human. The historical Berserker Brotherhood was eventually outlawed, not because they weren't effective, but because they were too effective. They became too dangerous to control, too addicted to violence to function in peaceful society, too divorced from human emotion to serve any purpose beyond destruction. Their legacy lives on in our language. When we talk about going berserk, we're referencing this ancient understanding that extreme violence requires the temporary abandonment of human consciousness. But we've forgotten the full cost of that abandonment, the price that berserkers paid for their legendary abilities. So the next time you hear someone romanticizing Viking culture or claiming they would have thrived in that violent age, remember what it actually took to be an elite warrior in 9th century Scandinavia. It wasn't about courage or honor or glorious battle. It was about systematically destroying everything human about yourself in service to forces that cared nothing for your individual survival. You wouldn't have lasted a day, and you should be grateful for that mercy. Sweet dreams.